Hey, hey,
Hello, brother. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's been a while. I don't think I've seen you for a while now.
Yeah, I'm not posting in the group anymore.
How is trade in general? How have you been doing?
Oh, actually, I'm not haven't been really active in trading, but I do look at the chart almost daily. It's because of work. I couldn't just time the market,
Yeah,
but I'm still there. I'm
it's nice to see you active today, though. It's nice to see you're following up again. It's been almost 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, or even more. I think. You
kind
know.
of like there. Yeah, I think it's almost like 2 years.
Yeah. All right, so welcome to today's section. I see everyone else is tuning in. I have a low battery. Unfortunately, we don't have electricity right now, but I'm going to do as much as possible till we can't, But for now, let's focus on answering questions. Anybody has any question you would want us to dive into before we go into any formal, chart analysis breakdown. Does anyone have any question relating to trading you might want us to look into?
I'm thinking. Jay. So I've been continually studying, and then also I see. Oh, sorry, Jay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, 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 I can hear you.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. It's just that, there's always another trader coming up saying this another strategy works, something like that, right?
Yeah,
So and I know you also have also been exposed to other strategies, other so that's what I'm just thinking because I like SMC. I like sometimes when you get that accuracy.
yeah.
It's just that maybe if and then what I also observe with other traders is that they also jump with strategies to another strategy and another strategy. So I really appreciate that when I see you, you always like stick with SMC. And then because not a lot of people are losing their belief with SMC. So I was just thinking that if we just stick with SMC, that will give us an edge with the market, right? Even though there might be a different market conditions, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, so for you, like is SMC has that like really good edge in the market if you just stick with it.
Okay. That's a very good question, actually. That's a nice one. And yeah, from a very experienced perspective, because from your question, you have to have that insight to SMC in general to be able to answer such question. And you have to also have insight to other strategies as well, which in general, I think is a great question because yes, I would say yes, because that's one of the reasons why I still actually stick to SMC you know. And there's this flexibility that comes with SMC that whenever the market conditions are not in a stable system where you have the average market structure, like, this, that you can easily just spot what's going on if you do know SMC, you know. But on market conditions where you find situations like this as well, SMC gives you that leverage of letting you look outside your casual system. You're just it's SMC gives you that ability to look outside your edge when the market conditions are difficult. Because SMC is a bunch of concepts. It's not just one particular system. It's not just fair value gap. It's not just order blocks. It's not just because in other systems they are very strict. Like Wyckoff, you have the schematics that you have to stick to. On Elliott Wave, you have certain patterns, you have to stick to certain rules, you know. On harmonic patterns, there are Fibonacci ratios you have to look for as well. But on SMC, there's no certain rule that says you have to use just order blocks or you have to use just liquidity zones. You can mix liquidity with what you see. It's basically trying to say whatever goes with market structure, that's what you're looking at. There are certain situations you look at Asian range, there are certain situations you look at, breaker blocks, and that's just SMC for you. So SMC gives you that flexibility that gives you that advantage of looking outside when the market conditions are difficult, which now brings the ideas of other concepts. You see, they might not generally be SMC. You might just, because of the situation you're in at the moment with market structure, you might end up applying some certain concepts from ICT while you're just a smart money trader, and you might even end up applying some system from Wyckoff if you do know Wyckoff. And that's the flexibility with SMC. And in terms of being profitable, SMC is actually very accurate if you don't get drowned in the paradox of refining, because SMC comes with order flow. You have this stuff everywhere. You can see market structure. SMC gives you the ability to see structure everywhere. And then you keep refining to the point where your area of interest might just be this, and then your stop loss is placed at this point where you're trying to get something, out of the ordinary, more of what you see on social media. It's possible, it's very possible, but at the same time, there's nothing stopping you from putting your SL here to avoid, any stop hunts to these lows, since this would be the major structure, right? And that understanding is it takes a level of experience as well to be able to identify that. But SMC comes without faults too, where you can get drowned in picking things like this as your POI, and then you're getting stopped out. You keep refining to the point where you have just this as your area of interest. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but at the same time, there's nothing stopping you from having all these zones if you're going to identify this, you know, and then that over refinement and too obvious, like picking another block like this as your area of interest, you know, and quite all right, this is an inducement for this zone, but because it's SMC and this is another block, you just want to see this. And that's a fault SMC bring, because there's no rule to saying the other block has to be mitigating an area of interest. That is based on your own experience. There's no rule in particular that is jotted down that says SMC says the other block has to not look too obvious or is a trap. That has to come from experience as well. So there's some certain level of advantage and disadvantage that comes with SMC that later gets controlled based on your experience with it, or you can get trapped in a paradox where you might need other methods, to get you out of that mentality. You might need to go and learn Wyckoff to understand that everything is rule based and you're not obligated to trading just other block. And if it looks fishy, you can look outside the box. You might need to learn other concepts to know that those kind of things are possible. Or you might try to force another block to work for you. And that's the flaw SMC brings. So regarding to your question, what I would say in general is that um, in terms of being profitable with SMC, yes, SMC is enough, but you have, as just as the word itself goes, smart money traders, you have to understand that you are being smart at all times. That's one thing with SMC. You have to be smart. It's not what you know, it's what you're seeing. And the more you trade SMC, the more you have to be good at that, you know. But with other concepts, it's not like that. That's another concept too. It's not like that with other concepts. Wyckoff, you just have to follow the schematics. If it's not there, it's not there, you know. So SMC, you have to be smart. It is profitable, but you have to be very, very smart. But if you're not smart, you could try other concepts too. That's my point, you know. But if you're willing to be smart and you don't mind falling for tricks like this, and having to not, get too drowned in knowledge where you start refining to places like this and missing out on trade, and something like this happens. You miss this, you got smart, so you just have to be smart at all times. That's SMC. You understand?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So I feel like that was a lot, but I'm also going to try as much as possible to get this recording out. So, maybe we can watch it again when we are free and see, what else we can get from the recording. Okay. So let's look into other questions. Anybody else has any question in general that, let's say, related to trading, maybe not just in technical analysis, yeah, let's say in general, and you might want to ask about it, before we look into the chart. I see Blue Wave. Blue Wave, how are you doing, bro?
I'm fine, boss. Boss, good evening.
Good evening, bro. Good evening.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm listening very well.
Okay,
Um,
okay. All right. So, and on a general note, since we're here, and it's also going to be passed out to everybody because at the end of the day, a lot of people do ask of the recordings from the sections. Times have changed. A lot of things have changed, and catching up with everything is a lot difficult these days. So that's why we are trying to arrange the YouTube channel as much as possible, so we can get access to everything whenever we want. And also, in terms of content, I just want to bring to you guys notice that Forex trading is currently making a lot of wave in terms of trend, and I think that is going to be coming up more in the future. Basically, Forex traders are becoming more into content creating. You understand? So majority of we, who trade privately, our stops are even good enough to be content, even at just posting just your results, and most of those stuff can also get monetized. So there's nothing, wrong. There's nothing wrong if you decide to, look into getting some public awareness to your art. It could become monetized. That's my take for it. I'm just saying you could monetize it, even if you're looking forward to making money directly from the market. You could still make money from your art. It's your work, and it's enough to go around. So nobody's saying you should trademark it or any of those stuff. Just, make money from it as a content like you would do if you were doing comedy. You understand? Because we are good at this stuff too. So, back to today's class. Let's say, like what I was identifying on my screen, this is GBP. In general, I was trying to say, in today's section, let's look into hidden bays. There was this brother that came to me over the previous weekend and he was trying to ask me if I could give more insight into hidden bays and also how to identify them, or what's the difference between a hidden base and an obvious order block. And this is something I've done a video on previously. It's a class we have had before, but I felt like, let me just give a little insight into hidden base itself as a general topic, so we can also have that video available. Okay, so the ideology of hidden base itself as a concept in smart money is talking about how an area of interest could be between two candles, where when we have the close and the opening, and then we have this space in between, where supply and demand happens. On the lower time frame, you have that drop base drop, and then on the higher time frame is just a transition from one candle to the other. So this happens to be a supply or a demand zone on the lower time frame, but on the higher time frame, it's just two candles. So it's a hidden POI, first of all, and it's at the base of a candle, the opening of this candle and the close of this candle. So it's within the base and it's hidden. So the ideology of the name and the concept of it is actually working hand in hand. So when you're trying to identify a hidden base, you should be identifying an area of interest that is hidden and likely between two candles. So it's not just an order block itself. It's a hidden order block or a hidden supply or demand zone. Okay. So I just wanted to get that breakdown out. So when we're talking about looking at the hidden base zone or any of those kind of stuff, we can easily identify that. Now let's look at chart examples of things like this we're talking about. So this would be an average demand zone, right? This would be considered a hidden base. although it got invalidated, but this would be considered a hidden base. As you can see, the close of a candle, the opening of a candle, but this is not your average in between two candles. This is the reversal aspect. And when you look at this from the context of the new support and resistance concept, the Malaysian support and resistance, let me call it that, is also looking at support and resistance zones. It's called, in that context, it's identified as support and resistance zones. Maybe when we have a video on that, I'll break that down. But in terms of smart money, it's called a hidden base because it's at the base of a candle or in between, the same thing. So this would be considered one, but it got invalidated here, which is why you saw, you can see here, we had the flip. Okay, so it was still basically price reacting up this as a valid zone. And then this would also, let's look for one. This would be considered one as well. Okay, this will be considered one as well. As you can see, the order block is not obvious, which if we do go to the lower time frame, we can also identify this order block. You can say we shift this to this point since it's starting from here. And if you look at the reactions we got from this point, you can see clearly that it was actually reacting to exactly this area of interest. You can also see that with this. You see, you can also see that with this. Okay, let me take this out. Let me make it this way. Okay. So you understand that it's actually a very powerful area of interest if you do know how to identify it properly. Okay. We can also consider this zone one as well, because if you look at this, and price actually reacted to it here. Okay, this candle reaction here, which you can see from this point, price returned back to this area here, which this would be considered a hidden base as well. And all these areas we're identifying here right now, if we should go to the lower time frame and look at these same zones, you'll find that they are average support or resistance, or we can say supply and demand zones. Okay, so if you go to the lower time frame of these same areas of interest we're identifying here, they look very casual, like your average supply and demand zones. This would be considered a hidden base as well. Okay, you can see open, close, a base basically with an area of interest hidden. So you can see this would be considered as well. Multiple stop horns, but it's still a valid zone. This would be the base. This would be the base. Let's say this point here. Okay. And then, yes, this would also be considered a hidden base as well. All right. This would also consider the hidden base as well. So if you look at this alone, you can already see what we are expecting in the market from the weekly time frame. Let's go to the 4-hour time frame. Let's observe those same zones on the lower time frame and see how they look. But you guys can understand the concept, right? Because if you look at this, and I know you guys, most of you are already familiar with the hidden base concept and all of that. So basically the class is kind of like revision to you. You understand? But I decided that maybe we should do something like this, in general, because it's not on YouTube. And most of the new guys that come in, I do recommend them to YouTube videos, because most of these YouTube videos are recorded sections. As you can see here, there's a perfectly fresh demand zone, perfectly created. You can see the rally, base, rally. right? But on the higher time frame, what was it? The close and the open of an average candle. So it's a hidden base on the daily, but a demand zone on the 4 hour. You see that's the breakdown of the concept. You can see here also the same thing. We had, if you refine this down to this point, you could say, okay, this would be the area of interest, which this would have been the reaction here, right? Because this was also a hidden base on the 4 hour time frame that mitigated this zone, which now all this area was at the daily hidden base. So this would be the area of interest, and then this would be a swing structure. So basically, price gave its reaction here, and then mitigated this zone instead, and then structure played out bearish. Clean price action. So you can see the high, low, low. So in as much as the structure looks rough, smart money can always break it down if you know how to, break down the concept you're looking at. Because this at this point, I'm just basically using just hidden base. And then after understanding how hidden base works and identifying it properly, market structure follows up with a clean price action to basically confirm that you are actually correct. So you're not correct because you do know you're correct. You're correct because when you start mixing up other concepts with it, it makes sense. And as you can see here, this was what would be considered, this would be what we considered as a change of character, right? And then this would be the internal structure. And this will be price mitigating the next area of interest. So a switch, a market structure. And how did we get to this point? By identifying the hidden base of the daily time frame. All I did was to identify the hidden base of the daily time frame. Mind you, this is current chart of GBP NZD. So I'm basically making analysis while breaking down what is a hidden base. So you can also identify it yourself. Okay, so that's why I said I'm going to just put the recording out, because most of these days my classes are basically becoming multiple phased. Like I could be explaining one thing here, and then you're understanding a different thing, and then you're trying to catching up with what I'm breaking down. So I'm just going to put the record down. So maybe when you watch it later on, you can then see how many other sites you can catch up with. Because it's always important to repeat classes like this. You understand? Because everything makes sense. And I know I wasn't basically telling everybody that I was making analysis. I was just like explaining what was hidden base. You understand? And then I ended up at this point, which is the current price action and having an area of interest here. So even if I'm saying, okay, let me break down the current price action, I'm not going to do much again. I'm just going to identify what I see within this range, and then we are done for the day. Okay. So far, anyone has any question before we continue? Because I'm about to break down what's going on within this range.